in Uganda, I'd also learned a little bit about China in 2010 when I was, in 2013 when I was doing my undergrad at Makerere University. So we just did, it was very shallow. We learned about the Chinese population. Of course, China is like the most populous country in the world. Then we learned about the one-child policy, but really not much. Then I was like, okay, I think I would love to go to China and maybe explore all of this. And I didn't want to do teaching anymore because I graduated as a high school teacher back home in Uganda, and I was also looking at changing my career path. And yeah, something politics, international relations was really, the field I was looking into. And yeah, I got myself in China and yeah, did this 2-year master. So 1 year is in class, and then the second year is for you to do a thesis. I would say I had mixed experiences, of course, good and bad. Maybe I would mention a few of, like the good things that I have learned while in China. Number one is that that was like my second international experience. I'd only been to Kenya. It was my second foreign experience, and that was good. And then also meeting all of these students from all over the world. It was, it felt like sort of a United Nations. We are over 50, 60 different countries gathered in China. So, and we had quality education, I would say. Most of our professors were highly educated doctors, both educated in China and abroad, and, they understood, how to deal with international students. And I also loved the fact that, it was a scholarship program, and, you also get some stipend. So in Uganda, I was really, struggling to, first of all, I was working, but then it didn't even feel like I was working because, yeah, I said, yeah, I mean, the master's is really a bonus for me. I have my bills covered and I don't have to worry so much. So there were so many reasons why I went to China, and I think looking at just the development from, the airport and Beijing airport. And Beijing airport, I think at the time was like the world's second busiest and also biggest, just after Atlanta airport. And I think when we left in 2019, they built, I think, the world's biggest now. It's called Beijing Dashing Airport. So I started to admire, China and its economic development. And also I realized, like, I'd not known about Peking University yet until I was in China and how prestigious it is. I realized it was actually top uni in China. And interestingly, they don't admit so many Chinese students, only I think 30 undergrad students from a province. And a province is like so many, the province could be like 30 million people, so they can only take like 30 students. So yeah, I mean, all of those were at my disposal, and yeah. So those are just some of, like the few good things that I learned from China. You're in almost the center of the world. Actually, China in Chinese is Zhongguo. So Zhong means center. So it's like, center of, I would say, Middle Kingdom. Yeah, that's how China translates too. So you're so close to America, you're close to everyone else. And I think, yeah, that was also an opportunity for me to travel. And yeah, I traversed the world. I went to Europe, I went to other parts of Asia, I went to America, and I traveled within China. And yeah, that was great. So those are like the good things. I'll come and tell you more about some of my other side of the story. Let me give my other friend also an opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, those are some very good experiences you have shared. Thank you. We'll go to I'm trying to remember the Chinese name now.
Yao Yong.
Yao Yong. Yes.
Nice name.
Yes. My China journey actually started in 2010. After graduation from school, we did our national service. We got ourselves employed in the mining company. Then at a point, I realized that whatever we were doing over there was just something like a routine work. Like nothing was really challenging me. So you wake up, you go to work, you know exactly what you have to do. You are not actually utilizing the brain to the fullest potential. So I decided to apply for schools outside. Now, a typical of a Ghanaian student or an engineering student, the countries that we normally focus on, Canada, US, Australia, New Zealand, UK. So I applied for these schools. Then I was there when one of my uncles called me that, oh, there is an advert in the dailies, Chinese Ghana government and Chinese government scholarship. I want you to give it a try. I said, okay. So I applied, and then I had admission from University of New Brunswick, Canada. But that one was a fee paying, so I was supposed to pay the fees. And my uncle was prepared to pay. Then my dad was like, no, since you've gotten the opportunity from the Ghana Scholarship Secretariat, you have a full scholarship, both Chinese government scholarship, which is a CSC, and then the Ghana government scholarship. It is better for you to go to China than for us to waste money paying fees in Canada. So honestly, going to China wasn't that, I would say I was so happy about it, because first, the program I was going to do, the geodesy, was actually going to be taught in Chinese. And when I look at the characters, it's really put me off that I'm going to study 1 year Chinese language and then use 3 years for the master's program, which is 4 years. And that's the same period that you use to even do PhD. So I wasn't so fascinated about going to China to do the postgraduate studies there. But you know, my dad insisted that no, you have to go. So I am back on this journey with a colleague who also worked with Dr. Glenn, Dr. Yaya Yakubu. The two of us set off to China. We arrived at Guangzhou. We had no idea about the Chinese language. We wanted a hotel to sleep, and honestly, to even communicate was a problem. But we were able to find our way to Wuhan. And then when we got to campus too, we were received nicely. The international students, they did well. They really accommodated us, showed us where we need to pass and what we have to do, and so on and so forth. So the first year, which was the Chinese language, I enjoyed it, honestly. But when I started the program itself, that was when the challenge started. So far, that is the journey. But as we progress, as questions come along, I think I will speak more about that. Yeah.
So I will start with Yao Yong. Even though you
Okay.
were not interested in going to China,
Yeah.
but so apart from your dad's decision, was there any other thing that really made you take the decision finally?
Yeah, honestly, you know, I was telling you that working in the mines, yes, you get the money, but I wasn't happy. And throughout my first degree, I wanted to become, let's say, a teacher or a lecturer. And the area I wanted to specialize was the geodesy that I have applied for. And then in CUG, China University of Geosciences, they were offering that program, and they had one of the best professors around to even mentor and supervise you. So I looked at these things. One, I don't want to continue working in the industry. It's boring to me. And I really wanted to pursue this teaching career, which eventually I'll need a PhD to be able to do that. So all these things where I considered these things and then also considered what I want to see myself in the next 5 or 6 years from that time. So when I look at a trajectory, since I want to come into the academia, and by the time that I was also leaving, geodesy, we had only 3 people in Ghana to have done that course or program. So it served as a motivation for me to go and also pursue it. Because the notion was that geodesy is too difficult, it's an abstract area, you can't even really apply it. So I said, okay, let me just go into that area, see how it is, and also be able to understand the level of difficulty they are talking about. So my goals that I have as a person, where I want to get to, contributed to my decision to go to China. Then secondly, I don't want to stay in the industry for that long. I wanted to take something that can really meet my life ambitions and goals and where I want to get to. So this contributed to me making a decision to go to China.
But would you consider the education you received there? How would you consider it? What do you think about it after having gone through all these thoughts, made your decision based on the fact that they were offering the program you wanted?
Yes, you know, I will speak for myself, and wherever I stand, I will say 100%. Whatever I have achieved within the shortest possible time in my academic life was because I schooled in China. For example, I'm just a senior lecturer, but anybody in the academic discipline, when you say a senior lecturer having an H index of 20 and is having over 1,300 citations and is having an I-10 index of 40 within the space of 8 years, tells you that this guy has really worked hard. And where is this zeal or the tenacity to push forward and break even the challenges that we have within our continent, to be able to work so hard like that? Now, yes, the Chinese education, people might have their own opinion, but one thing I can say is that those of us who studied in the Chinese language, if you are able to follow what has been taught in class, you want to do the assignment that has been given, you want to be serious and move with the Chinese, I'm telling you, wherever you find yourself, if you are not even among the best, you definitely be among the people that they will consider to be the best, let me say it that way. Because, for example, we go to class, you are being taught in Chinese. Now, you need to come back, study the terminologies in your area, understand the pinyin, how you can read the characters, translate the slides, do the assignment before you sleep. So you are sleeping almost every day around 2 a.m. and you are waking up like 6 a.m. That is the training that they've given me. And everything that some of us were doing was self-tutoring. You have to work by yourself, because no matter how good you can have conversation outside the classroom with your colleagues, with your friends, when it comes to the technicalities of what you are studying, it's a different ball game together. Because some of the characters, you can read it, but when they combine it, it means a different thing. If you tell me Chenzo to sit, then I say Zhuo Biao is coordinates, then you are confused. So it made some of us to really work hard to be able to match up with the Chinese and truly to be able to match up with them. Honestly, we worked so hard to the extent that even when supervisor calls for supervisory meeting and we say we are not available, they will cancel it, because he was seeing the input that we give even to the other Chinese students, their works. So for me, I've already told my wife that no matter what, one of my kids must go to China and get a PhD. Because look, I've met, with no due respect to anybody schooling anywhere else, but China, especially the PhD, you cannot graduate without having the SCI publications. And SCI, SCIE, these are top class publishing journals, high impact factor journals. How are you going to do that? So through the PhD, you are being taught the rigors of academic research. So the moment you're able to break those boundaries and you're able to complete the PhD, I mean, when you come back, I mean, publishing in those places becomes like something simple for you, because you know exactly what they want and how you have to structure your publication to be able to even get there. So the Chinese education has helped me. Now, anything I want to study, I can just study it. I don't need anybody to teach me again. So that is the self-tutoring that they gave us. Of course, they have their own issues. Supervisors, most of the time, do not even care about what you are doing unless they see that you submitted a paper on your own, and then the comments will come before you will now open up to you. But all these things, for me, if it had not happened, maybe I wouldn't have even worked harder like I did. So for me, anywhere I stand, whatever I have achieved, master's, PhD that I did in China, that is the foundation. And that is the best place that I can advise anybody to go, because you go through the rigor, especially the PhD. You can't just do anything and go. No, you have to give them the publications, sometimes 3, sometimes 4. And the moment you're able to meet those targets, wherever you are an expert already.
Wow, that's really great. Thank you so much. In fact, I've heard a lot, and I believe that those who are listening to us on this webinar are picking up a lot of things. It looks like the education in China was very impactful for you.
Yes.
That's good. Thank you so much. Joel, I heard you talk about your university, you being the 3rd cohort in the university. Did you also study in Chinese, or yours was in English? And how was the education? How do you view getting educated in China? What are some of the challenges you experienced? Because in your first remark, it looks like you really enjoyed your time in China.
Yeah, I mean, I would say for the most part, I think it was a good experience. Yeah, I can definitely feel Dr. Yao's submission, having to study in Chinese. That was not really the case with me. Our master's was in English, and Chinese language was like a course unit, and we did it for 2 semesters, and that was it. But everything was in English, so we didn't really have to worry so much about the language bit. But even if it was in English, like, you still need the Chinese language to, get around, so I actually, after facing a lot of challenges with the language, I had to try to also, learn just by myself. I enrolled in a summer program where, it was still fully paid by our faculty. Actually, our faculty had a lot of money, like a lot of money. So it's Peking University Summer International, something like that. People come from around the world and they pay crazy money just for the summer so that they can learn some courses. And mine was fully paid for by our uni. So I studied Chinese only for I think a month, yeah. So by the time I left China, my language skill, I think, was intermediate, and yeah, and that was good. But until now, I'm still, learning Chinese just by myself, because I know how important that is for research purposes, but also just for communication, but also, if you want to work with Chinese companies. Still talking about money, our school was very privileged. I mean, you can go and check the website. I think it was a very special program. So in terms of research, also, we had money at our disposal. So it was actually mandatory for us to do field excursions, and you plan where you want to go as a group, and they pay for your plane ticket, they pay for your hotels, they pay for everything. You can spend like a week, and then come back. And then we also had lots of events, of tours. You just sign up and they're fully paid for. You go and see sites. They can be technology sites, they can be heritage, they can be anything. And also in terms of the stipend, we got 3,000 yuan, and most people on scholarships at masters got 2,500. So we still had, this privilege, and we lived in a hotel, not in a student dormitory. But if we moved just, meters away to our, like just the normal student accommodation, you'd find like 6 or even 10 people in just a room. But ours was like a hotel setting, either a single room just by yourself or a double room, but you only have to share like bathroom and stuff. So ours was a really unique program. And I totally understand. I guess our program is actually, I think our program has a very special motivation. It's a government program. So I think the goal is to bring as many Americans as possible and as many Europeans as possible, because of course, the situation right now, the competition between China and the West. So I guess the program is really to get more Western perspective. And also, if I'm to break down, the demographics, we're only, 4 people from Africa, almost 60, almost 2/3 were Europeans and Americans, people from the West. So that tells you the motivation of our program. That's just my own imagination. I don't want to be misquoted. Yeah. But also just the other things. When I went to China, I cannot agree more with Prof. The Chinese people really work so hard in terms of, so we had bookstores. You would find people spending nights, in the bookstores. Really people studying so hard. At 25, I met a lot of Chinese already studying PhD. At the time I was 26 and I was doing my master's. And I'm like, what am I doing? I'm like one of the oldest people in my class, And so I said, I need to work so hard. And until now, many people from my community have not really understood me and why I'm doing more studies. Because I want to compete. I've seen how things are in China, and this exposure was really good for me. So my goal is to get a PhD before I am 37. I know that's late for me, but yeah, that's what I'm really. But yeah, talking about the quality of education, if you study in Chinese, I guess you would definitely get like the best. I would like to say that most of my Chinese professors, yeah, they would speak English, yes, but then somehow they would also be limited. That's one thing. But also, I guess if you're studying something arts, maybe social sciences, I guess that is, to me, that's sort of a gray area in China. Politics is a very sensitive topic in China. You may ask me why I'm doing a second master's, but yeah, I also thought, yeah, I mean, I did my research. I did my first master's, but then, yeah, I didn't really think that I did like an independent research sort of, because I wanted to go to the critical areas. That is what research is about. Like it doesn't have to have any boundaries. Yeah, I mean, there can be critical areas like in Australia. What they consider like critical is maybe when you're studying critical technology, security stuff, then you may need to get some permission, right? But I think it's the reverse in China. Critical is not anything to do with science, I guess. Critical is politics. Yeah. So if you want to study things around Taiwan, Hong Kong, Macau, so those would be very critical issues. History, the Tiananmen incident, those are, but overall, they were really, they are very knowledgeable professors, and I'm still in touch with them until now. The other thing,
Joe, before you go on, I heard you mention about how your community does not understand why you're still pursuing education. One of the things I want to really get from you is, did you go back home after your studies in China? If you did, what was the reaction for people, for you who have studied in China? How did they receive you? How did they perceive you, or the kind of education you have received?
so I'll say that in my country, really, like the ordinary citizens, people in the community don't really understand much about China. Again, also for us who study politics, international relations, and diplomacy, people don't really pay attention to external affairs, right? So they leave it to mostly the politicians. So if you ask people about China, they would only tell you, very vague things about China. The people who build roads, the people who, eat snakes, the people who eat dogs, stuff like that. And actually, when I told my people I was going to study in China, they were like, "So what are you going to eat? Are you don't dare tell me you're going to eat all of this crazy stuff that we've seen." I said, "Come on, shut up." One of my goals after returning from China is to educate people. That's why we got this, China-Uganda network chapter, and we are going to be running a podcast just to educate people. And we're going to start with, very basic things before even, disseminating research and stuff. So part of what we'll be doing is, what you're doing exactly, telling stories. So we want to bring some Chinese in Uganda, like to also share the experiences, so that kind of piece will be consumed in China. And then we get, Africans with experience in China to tell their stories. So that would also help, the people back home in Uganda. So people don't think that you've gone to the best place, but I knew, of course, the value, because I think people also are like Prof said, people are obsessed with the West. I want to go to the UK, if not the UK, then the US, if not the US, Australia, New Zealand, these countries. But people also started to see, how far I would go after my China. From China, actually, people would see me going to other, to these Western countries. They're like, "Oh, this is real." And, the ones who are very negative about China, I also want to go to China. I said, "You have no idea. The school I went to globally ranks, it's among the top 30. Peking University ranks even higher than the Australian National University. I checked last year's ranking, we were number 12 globally. So it beats most of the American institutions, most of the British universities. But these are stories that people don't know, If you talk about engineering, I don't think there is any other countries that beats China. If you talk, like, a lot of Western countries depend on Chinese students to drive most of their critical sectors. And they retain such talents, by the way, So, unfortunately, we are very few people who are going to China, But I've also tried my best, to tell people the China story, apply. I've supported a couple of people apply to go to China. Though there's also a huge problem. Of course, this is like a domestic problem in our countries. Like, the processes are not very clear, like for people to apply, because like for the CSC scholarship, you have to go through, Chinese embassies and stuff. So there's a way the politicians come in the way of these applications. So they have some students that, they prefer, and those are the ones that will go first. You understand? But for my case, mine was managed by the university. So it was very transparent. So I had a Zoom interview like this, and then, yeah, it's like merit-based. And that was one of my recommendations also, I think, in one of the conferences that I spoke at. I said, we need to, like, if China is to have legitimacy, because there are lots of scholarships that the governors announced. But if China thinks that these scholarships have to benefit, African talents, then I think there are a lot of talented Africans back home, but they cannot access this because the process is flawed.
Yeah.
When I went to the Chinese to the Ugandan embassy in Beijing for our independence celebration, most of them were, asking me, "How did you get here?" Because I didn't go through the process that they know, right? So we need to tell people to also explore other avenues. But in 2018, the president announced over 50,000 scholarships for Africans. So those opportunities are there, but again, I don't think a lot of Africans know about them. And if they do know, many people would complain about the processes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think you had a rare experience in China. With the kind of university you attended, and with the kind of program, the kind of approach, the places you stayed, and the kind of life you lived, I think it's a rare experience. Many people would really I love that. If that was everyone's story, but thank you so much for sharing that. I'll go to Yao Yong to find out, how were you received when you came back to Ghana? You are now a senior lecturer. How did people view you having come back from China, having studied in China? How was it when you were immersing yourself into the Ghanaian job markets?
Oh, okay. I would say, fortunately for some of us, we got a job when we completed a master's degree. So I started lecturing, then I got the PhD, which I have to do it like a split kind of stuff. I stayed in Ghana for some time, then I went to China for 6 months, came back, taught, and then went back for 1 year to finish. Look, let's face it, 2010, 2012, 2013, when you say you are going to China, there is this prejudiced mindset about China, as Joel rightly said. Like 2010, some of my colleagues at the mine will say, why do you want to go to China? To go and do what? China, I mean, what do they have? So I think that's also served as a motivation for some of us to really work hard, because when you come back, you know, Ghana, you need to prove yourself. You will not say that, oh, I've gotten the degree even from MIT, so that is it. No, people would like to test your knowledge to really know whether you have the fact. So when I came when I started working in 2014, well, it was okay, but the attention wasn't really that much because you started just as an assistant lecturer. So I believe it was just 4 years when I completed a PhD and came back, and then I co-supervised the first PhD student or candidate. The kind of work that we did, which was basically in artificial intelligence. So that was when, I mean, the system recognized that, no, this Chinese train really has something. So being accepted in the system at the beginning, I mean, if you have just started work, nobody really cares about you that much. But I think the turning point happened after I completed a PhD in 2017. Then I had opportunity to graduate my first PhD student that I had. So that was the turning point. And then from there, the rest are just story. So the acceptance wasn't really a problem, but you really need to prove your worth within the university community, because we have people who have gone to some of the best universities in US, in UK, and then in other places. But you see, what we had over these people, and I will always say it, is the publications that the Chinese will enforce on you to do. Most of these countries, Australia also do that. You publish in A-star journals before you graduate. But most of the universities outside, they are more into the thesis-based oriented style of PhD. You need to complete your PhD, submit your thesis, graduate. Then at the postgraduate level, that is when you start doing the publications. So most of the guys that went to the other countries, you realize that when they come back, they only have conference presentations or conference publications to show. But for us that went to China, you will see that, yes, even out of his PhD, he's having like 4 publications. Then the ones that he has worked with the supervisor's student and the supervisor himself, you realize that he's having a total of about 12 or 15 publications within 3 years that he did the PhD. So that gives us an edge. Now, the moment you start looking at that person's profile, and because you are also in the academic space, you understand exactly the journals that the person has published in, you don't have any choice than to give the person the respect and the recognition or acceptance that the person desires. So for me, I never had any problem in terms of the system accepting me, but I believe the recognition actually came after the PhD. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much. I'm grateful that we all had our chances. I'm going to let Pam take over, and I hope to hear from both of you more about your stories. And we'll also give a chance to participants who are joining us to have a chance to also ask some questions. So, Pam.
Thank you so much, Florentine. Thank you to Joel and Yao for your submissions. I'll go over to Yao. You mentioned earlier how being a part of or going to a Chinese institution has helped you back home in the job market in your position where you are at now. Having spoken to previous panelists, there's been a conversation about acceptance of people that studied in China, the integration into the job market, how hard it is for them to find something. So in your opinion, what do you think is the cause of this? Do you think that it's easier for certain students that graduate to come back to get jobs if they're in specific industries? What do you think is the problem, the disconnect between certain graduates finding it difficult to find jobs while others integrate so easily?
Yeah, thank you, Pam. I believe that unemployment is a general issue in this world. It is not only related to we that have schooled in China, but it's a general problem. I think even in the US, they still have unemployment issues. But there's one thing that I want to say from my personal experience. For example, in geomatic engineering, there's an aspect we call GIS, Geographic Information System. Now, the time that I was leaving Ghana, almost all the lecturers that have taught me, that is their research direction, let me say. Most of their research that they have conducted or carried out are in geographic information systems. No, now the question is, if I should go to China and also pursue geographic information systems, and I come back and I want to look for employment, you've really done nothing, because this is something that everybody is doing. But I can tell you that I got this lecturing job with my master's degree because of the area that I went to specialize, geodesy. And at the moment, even in the University of Mines and Technology, I'm the only trained geodesist. So you see, you must identify the needs of the industry or the academic space if you want to go there. Because if you do things that everybody is doing, no matter where you schooled, when you come back, everybody sees it to be normal. But meanwhile, for example, if you travel outside and you want to do this GIS, it's purely computer programming, highly programming. But because over here, we are more of the applied based GIS expert, no matter your programming knowledge, nobody really cares that much about it. You will all be boxed into one group that we are all GIS experts. So one, we should know what we want to do at the postgraduate. And I keep telling my students that BSc, the first degree is just the foundation. What you do after the first degree defines your path. And about 80%, our postgraduates have influence on where we want to get to. So some of them, because they are just in the house, assuming you've done geomatic engineering, and then you've gotten scholarship to go and do public administration. When you come back, how do you fit in? It's very difficult, unless you have your own company or some protocols before you can break through. But you've done geomatic engineering. You've gone to, let's say, do geotechnical engineering. It is related. So you are moving away from the geomatic, the surveying perspective of measurement, to analyzing the properties of soil. You see, so that is interconnected, and that can create avenue for you. So I believe that before anybody can embark on the postgraduate program, you must first of all identify, and that is where you can be relevant. You are doing public administration in the University of Ghana, Lagos. You are doing it in Gimpa, in Ghana here. There are a lot of universities doing it up to the PhD level. So when you bring your public administration, what have you really contributed? They see it to be nothing. then you are now going to compete with people that are within the same space for a job that virtually is not even existing. But assuming you go and do one of the difficult aspects of public administration, where we lack personnel in the country, when you come back, you will not struggle to get the job. Because like for the Chinese system, these people are many, over 1 billion or something population. So you realize that everybody wants to add certain quality to themselves in addition to the degree that they have. So I was talking to our innovation group yesterday, and I was telling them that, look, you are in UMass doing, let's say, computer science engineering. Someone is at KNUST doing computer science engineering. No degree is better than the other because the curriculum is almost the same. Now, you've gone for a job interview. The question is, the KNUST guy is first class, the UMass guy is first class. The question they will ask is, what do you have beyond your certificate? And that is what defines you. That is what will put food on the table for you eventually. So for me, I did engineering in China. And I believe that the way we are trained, when you come back and with the publications that you are going to have, it is extremely difficult for people to reject you like that, unless there is no space for you to be employed. But those who go into the social sciences, I believe that there are certain areas in social sciences that even within Africa, nobody is going into it. So people are listening to us. My advice is that where people do not want to go, my professor, my supervisor will say, Yao, you must go into the area that the angels fear to tread. You see, so you go there. Even the angels fear to tread the place, but you are going there. Now, when you go there, that is how people will see you to be unique. But when you follow the crowd, it's already crowded and you are going to other, then it becomes difficult. So that is what I can say about what you've asked me.
Thank you, Doctor. I think that's a really well answered question, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. We need to make sure students are going in to study and to bring back skill sets that are actually needed, in the country. Joe, you spoke about being the first Ugandan in your program, Yancheng Academy.
That's right.
If you look at the trajectory, if you look at back then in Uganda when you first started your application process, the receptions of China, you compare it to now, do you think that the perception has changed, what people will perceive of studying in China, the opportunities there? Do you think that there's been a shift? And if not, what do you think could be done to increase visibility to the fact that China is not a bad place to study?
Yeah, I would say there is really been a change because since I went to China, I guess more and more people went after me, except for the time when, the world was locked due to COVID-19. I guess there's been a lot of exchanges between Ugandans and Chinese in terms of, Ugandans going to study in China. And also we have a growing kind of, Chinese, China-educated people in Uganda. So, and they have events. So in such events, they talk about the experiences like we're doing now, but also just, try to inform the general public of the Chinese education opportunities that exist, so that, people can take them up. I've also seen a growing Chinese presence in my country, and many people, they are local Ugandans that have never been to China, but they speak a bit of Chinese now because they've worked with Chinese companies, and such people have also become interested in, going to pursue maybe further studies in China. But I think one thing which is not being done is the Chinese universities don't really do robust PR in terms of creating awareness. My school is doing that, and I'm also the alumni secretary for Africa. So we help with recruitment of the people on the African continent. We host information sessions where we also, let people want to, apply for the program to ask questions. We give them a feel of China. So, and then it's entirely up to them to see if that's, something that they want to do. But I would say that many people from the arts and social sciences don't look at China as a destination for their career, for advancing their career. They would rather go to Europe or to America or elsewhere. But for engineering, I guess many people are having seen the work that Chinese companies do. They have not seen Americans doing roads. They've not seen many European companies doing roads. So people believe in Chinese engineering. So 100%, if somebody wanted to educate their child to become an engineer, China would definitely be one of the options. But also, while in China, I guess China needs to do more in terms of how it treats African students who are in China. I guess none of us has talked about, the kind of treatment that we get, like the kind of negative. Of course, there are all of these good treatments, but even Africans back home have seen during COVID-19 how, discrimination became a really big issue for Africans living in China, and also, there is this kind of treatment. There is racism everywhere. That's not to say that there is no racism in America. There is, but in China, for some of us who were in China, there are some really extreme levels of, of discrimination, So I think the Chinese government, while the Chinese government is also currently pursuing foreign policy, that's supposed to be one of the core things that it has to address. People just sneaking and taking your photos, on the train, in the public, and somebody just stands and starts taking your photos. That has to be made illegal. So that happened a lot to me while I was in China, and and in Guangzhou, if you go to Guangzhou, I understand Chinese population is huge, but there are a lot of African Chinese children. I think at the time I was there, there were nearly 6,000, 10,000. But we did our class research in Guangzhou, and we spoke to some of the parents there and some of the people doing business. Some of the things that happen in the Chinese community, especially where there are a lot of Africans, have to, I think, attract kind of a government attention. At the time we went, there was a public notice that African guests are not allowed in this hotel. So we debated that in our class as well. And also, while we were in the elevator in one of the hotels, personally, I saw that drugs are not allowed in this hotel. So, and that's a hotel that many Africans frequent. So this kind of perception also has to go. And in terms of research, as China also opens up to the world, I guess it also has to accept that we come from different kind of political settings, especially people from democratic nations would prefer to speak up, freely, and there shouldn't be boundaries that this is a no-go area for your research. Then and then they also, I think, need to invest more in educating their professionals, like their lecturers, their professors, to be more accommodating to international people, like international audience. And then I'll also mention, the kind of censorship that we have while in China. Like you can't use Google Scholar, like Google is banned. You can only use Baidu, Baidu Search, Baidu D2, like all of these things. And they're in Chinese language. Like it was really challenging for me. and use of VPN is illegal in China. And to me, that actually hurts research. If you're serious with your research and you're doing this global kind of research, then you don't want to block Washington Post, you don't want to block BBC, you don't want to block Google. I mean, you want people to have different perspectives. I think, unfortunately, that's something that the Chinese government is doing. And if they could also, improve on stuff like that. Students are not allowed to work while in China. But yeah, in most of the other countries, like in Australia, at the moment, you can do full-time. In the US, you can do up to 20 hours a week. In other countries, I guess. And after your study, like Professor Yao has spoken about, what is there for Africans after study? So in Australia, for instance, there are like pathways to, integrating into the job market. You can apply for a 2-year post-study visa. Like you can work in the country for 2 years, stuff like that, and some pathways to citizenship. But unfortunately, there's no such thing as, you African becoming a Chinese national. I also understand like the population pressure and stuff. By the way, there is a lottery program where they allow 1,500 people, I guess, on a yearly basis. But I don't think many Africans even get that anyways, because I've seen the list when I was in China. I think they mostly just get like retired professionals who have a lot of savings from somewhere in Western Europe or America to come and, live in China and spend. I haven't seen really a lot of Africans, but yeah, but that's okay. But there should be some sort of pathway programs that, after you study, there is something you can do with your degree and you can stand out, in the crowd, and they can keep supporting you. I guess that's just all I have to say. I think I've summarized it all, my experience. Thank you, Pam, and yeah, back to you.
Thanks, Joel. You mentioned not long ago about pathway after graduation. Do you think that if there was such a thing, a lot of African graduates would remain in China rather than come back on the continent?
I would definitely think so, because like for my case, after completing my study, there was nothing. There was zero. Like I had to start looking for opportunities back home, try to compete with people who are already in Uganda, and like, so, after studying in China, you also think that, you're now very big, you're a foreign educated person. So, but I ended up even going for the smallest fish, so you can imagine this kind of humiliation. But again, it depends on what you studied, like Professor Yao said. So if they were like, China has some of the biggest companies, Huawei, Alibaba, some of these biggest names in the unicorn, list. Actually, the unicorn has a lot of Chinese companies. So, but like they need to have this, after your study, maybe they can take you on to do, let's say, 1 year sort of a traineeship. I've not seen that happen, unfortunately. And they could also maybe have some, campus recruitment, stuff like that. A lot of Africans would love to stay because back home in Africa, I would say in like the job market is more competitive, but also in terms of the wages, it's still, African wages. So many people would love to remain in China and still make some Chinese yuan and gain more skills, but they just find it really very hard. Like the visa just pushes them out, after they run out of the visa, like you've graduated, so that's just the end. So you need to leave. Yeah, that doesn't happen. And I don't know why, but I think that it's because population is a big thing in China. And immigration is really a big thing. Even the people who do business in China, like they normally have visa issues. When we were doing our research in Guangzhou, we spoke to people who have children, with Chinese, and they have to be doing their visa, like on a yearly. So that tells you that if somebody has a sort of African Chinese kid, so they should feel more Chinese, right? But like for me, I shouldn't even complain about visa. If somebody who is, I would consider like half Chinese already has issues with the visa, then I would find it even much harder, like with the visa. And yeah, I totally understand. One of the professors mentioned in Guangzhou, it's is it one of these universities? Is it Xinan University, I guess, yeah. They said in Chinese society, there is no such thing as, you will not be Chinese if you're not born Chinese. So you have to be born Chinese for you to become Chinese. So, and that, I started to relate that to what I saw with African Chinese people, I have somebody like a lady, she's from Uganda, and I think the father is Chinese, and she would go to study in China and still, do all of these visas that we do. So it doesn't really make any difference. Yeah.
Right. One last question before we go to the Q&A. You're pursuing another master's in Australia. What was it like? What was the application process like applying to a Western university with a degree from China? Was it widely accepted? Was it recognized? Or did you have a tough time applying with your Chinese degree?
Oh yeah, I think the West understands that, China has some of the best institutions, but, sometimes they would not admit to you that, China beats us in this, in that. But my study in China earned me credit for one semester. So I reduced my study load by 24 credits. So instead of finishing my program in 2 years, I'm going to finish like in a year and a half. So to me, that was, so that means they recognize your university. Unlike if I had graduated from my Ugandan uni, and then I said, oh, I'm asking for credit transfers, they would be very hesitant, right? So anyway, I think that they recognize the Chinese education system, especially if you come from some of the top. And that has never also been an issue when I was applying. I just kept applying, and I got admitted, like every time I applied, but there was no funding. Funding is a huge issue in Australia right now. So I am a self-funded student, but like I said, you can work full time and pay your bills. So that's exactly what I'm doing. Yeah, I think they do recognize that, and because where I came from ranks even higher than the university I was coming to. So I think they could surely, see this. And I am at the faculty of, Asia and the Pacific. So most of the scholars here are doing research in, South China Sea, Asia. So I think, yeah, I am in the right place, and my study definitely paid off. Yeah.
Thank you. We're going to go to the Q&A. We have a question from Norman.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Oh, sorry. Yes, we're going to go to the Q&A. We have a question from Norman, and he's interested in knowing what unique teaching styles or learning methods that the Chinese universities have that are different from universities on the continent, and what advice you'd give to African students studying in their home countries to be able to compete globally. That's his question to both of you. So whoever wants to start can.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, yeah.
Okay. I'm in the academic space, so okay. Truth be told, if you look at the number of years you left the university, and then you come back and you are still seeing what you were taught, let's say 10 years ago, that is still being taught to students, that is a problem. and why am I saying this? I mean, before my time at the university, we were using Nokia 3310. Now that phone is no more in existence. That means that the moment technology is advancing, education is also, in geology we say metamorphism, it's also changing. So that process must also move with changes in the curriculum. And the moment there is a change in the curriculum, the tutor or the instructor must make sure that he or she is teaching the students the current trends of issues. So for example, in UMath, we just revised our curriculum, and now it is compulsory for all the students to register and take a course in artificial intelligence applications in their area of specialization. So we have artificial intelligence application in geomatics, minerals engineering, mining, geology, environment, and so on. Why did we do this? When you go into the media space, everybody is talking about AI. So it means that if we don't grab the opportunity now and train our students to push in that direction, in the next 5-10 years, all the students will churn out will be redundant because they don't even have the basic knowledge of the current trend of events. We have ChatGPT now. This is a generative AI model that has come to stay, whether we like it or not. So it means that the student we are training must be abreast with current issues or current trends of things. In terms of the teaching styles, I mean, in every university, whether Africa or globally, the teaching style sometimes is even the same. In the classroom, the difference is the practicals. For example, in China, I was taught a lot of mathematics, but the mathematics that I was being taught, I go to the laboratory to do practicals on the mathematics that I'm studying. Is it the same in Africa? No. In Africa, we teach the student dy, dx. Well, differentiation, integration, calculus. We give them like we are training even engineers like let me say a pure mathematics student or a mathematical science student. Engineers are supposed to apply the mathematical knowledge, and that is one of the biggest loopholes that we are facing in Africa. We teach them the mathematics all right, but how do they apply the mathematics to solve problems related to their disciplines? This is one area that we fall short. Because, for example, we've been taught quadratic equation, even from junior high school, senior high school. But how do I use the quadratic equation as a geometric engineer to solve a problem? That is missing. So you are being taught the theoretical aspect and how to solve what I always say, raw questions. Like probability. A box has red and pink balls. What's the probability that I pick a blue ball? I mean, no. We've passed, the Western world have passed that stage. Yes, you may be taught that, but they will give you a practical scenario that you must demonstrate the probability that you've studied to solve a peculiar problem. So most of the teaching style in Africa, in terms of the theory, we are on top. We don't have problem. And that is why when we travel outside, when it comes to sit, learn what you have been taught and reproduce, we are the best. But the moment you are put to the task to apply what you have studied, we struggle. And that is a fact, because we are so much concentrated on in Ghana, we say chew and pour, memorize and give us what you have memorized, so that you get the 90s, the 80s, get the first class and then go. But over there, it's not like that. You go to a class, I did applied mathematical methods. The professor comes to the class and is asking, I want to know the various disciplines that constitute this class. So you raise your hand. I'm in geodesy, one is in cartography, this person is in hydrology, this person is into minerals engineering and so on. Now the professor will teach you the math concept, optimization. Now during practical sessions, he is demonstrating to you research works that people have done in your area, and how they have applied optimization. So by the time you finish the program, it is not just about learning the theory, but you also understand how you can apply and implement such theory in your area of specialty. And that is what, per my experience, is lacking. When it comes to the theory, we can teach. But when it comes to the practical component, that the student must be able to demonstrate how he can implement what he has studied in the classroom, that one is lacking. One, some are due to lack of resources. We in engineering, we need modern laboratories, modern labs, modern laboratory equipment to be able to carry out certain experiments, which you are handicapped here because we are less resourced to be able to get such equipment or instruments in the laboratory. So you have to always try to improvise to be able to carry out certain experiments. So the major difference for me from the engineering perspective is that the student do not know the technical know-how in applying, especially the mathematics that we are studying. And engineering was built on the foundation of mathematics. So if I'm able to solve the normal mathematics questions, and then I come to my discipline, and I don't even know that the partial differential equations I've done in calculus can be used to study the flow of water, then it's a problem. And when you travel outside, that is the gap that you are going to see, because they will give you the scenarios. You have been asked to use your mathematical knowledge to solve the problem, and you find yourself wanting because you have never even been introduced to such areas before. So for me, that is what I will say. But in terms of theory, we are all teaching the theory very well. But the practical component, that is what is missing. And I'm speaking directly with regards to the engineering. I don't know much about the social sciences, but I think Joel can handle that aspect. But for engineering, we lack the practicals. Sometimes, for example, geometry, we have the instrument that a student can do practicals. Yes, we don't normally go to the laboratories, but what about the other department that do more environmental scientists? He needs laboratory equipment to carry out certain experiments. But if you don't have world-class laboratory, then how do you even introduce the student to the current trend of research in the area? It becomes extremely difficult. So I think that this one even goes beyond the university. It's more of a governmental issue where the government needs to resource the technological engineering universities so that they can also push the students to the next level. Most of us here in UMaT, we're trained outside, Australians, US, UK, a lot of us, and we are all young guys. But someone used even the whole world, they are having the first made equipment that he has used to do his PhD. He comes to Ghana, we don't have it. So even when he's teaching, he knows the practical know-how. It will still become like a theory explaining to the student. And that is what I think that we lack within the African setting. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, Joel, do you have anything else to add?
Thank you. Yeah, I think Yao has said a lot. So I came from Uganda at Makerere University, and that's like Uganda stopped. And I thought, okay, now I'm going to China, stop. And now I'm at Australia, stop. So at the time I went to China, yeah, I thought, yeah, I'm really, like I'm bright. And yeah, but then you reach China and then you see, everything is different. But yeah, I think that a lot is needed, like back home, to do with funding of our education system, but also I guess poverty is a really big problem. Like I did my first degree without a laptop. Like that is really not how it should be, And then you walk into a class in China, everyone has an Apple computer, and then I thought, is this Silicon Valley? What is this? Then you have to, you start to work hard and be on top of your game. So this is a shock, like I'm telling you a real story. And I went with my old Ugandan laptop, and just once, and I put it under my bed and I never pulled it out again. I said, the next time I get my stipend, all of it is going into buying an Apple laptop. And that's exactly what I did, you know. So this is a sad thing, unfortunately, you know. A lot of students in China and, you know, elsewhere, they have the privileges, you know, they grow up with technology. And technology is big in China. Like there's a way technology can make teaching and learning really easy. You know, with the internet and stuff, you know, things can be very easy. And also with research, you know, I studied geography, but I wasn't really into research and I'd not written anything, you know, like not even a proposal. So when I went to China, that was when I started to do a thesis, you know. So that's one. Then I think the other thing is also back home, we need to I would say our curriculum is not updated. We need to decolonize our curriculum. That is like the message, because we were still using the British, you know, like the British left 60 years. They left Uganda 60 years back, but we've not done much like to modify our curriculum. Like you can't tell me the problems that Uganda faced 60 years ago are still the same problems that we face now. They may be the same problems, but I think how we tackle them really varies, you know. So my university back home in Uganda lately, they released a list of courses that they called expired courses. And I said, yeah, this is good. And this is how we should be thinking, because the whole goal of education is to solve problems. If you can't use your education to solve a particular problem in the society, then I guess it ceases to be education. So that is really one. And, you know, also in Uganda, you graduate and then you struggle to get your transcript. I had to spend months without my transcript. I don't know what the scenario is like in West Africa, in Ghana, but like when I went to China, you can print out your transcript by yourself. There's a machine, you go and you log in, and then it prints out your stamped transcript. Like that shouldn't be an issue. But until now, there are students who have graduated over a year ago and they haven't received their transcripts. So there is an internal problem in our universities that need to be fixed, because that transcript is holding somebody up. Like they want to progress with their education, they want to find a job, but unfortunately they can't have it. It's just a simple machine that we could have, and then, you know, make it available for students to use. So these are like some very bureaucratic systems that we have in our universities that have to change. And I think also our education systems need to focus, you know, on the bigger picture. I think we need to look, you know, like we need to have a wider view of the world. Look at what is, like, we need to be on top of the industry. I don't think that we learned a lot about the rest of the world in my classes back home in Uganda. But when I went to China, like, you know, you even just reading the news, like, you know what's happening. This has happened in America, this has happened somewhere. So you like work with the trend. And I remember one of my classes was every week we meet, you have to write a news article. So like you read the news and then you pick a news that you think you want to share in class, and then, you know, you have to present it. So we would never have such back home. It's like some of the teachers, and then at the end of the semester they give an exam. So I don't think that we have, you know, the application bit of things in our education system. We just receive, and then we have to prove that we've received by writing an exam and, you know, passing the exam. But in terms of really exposing the learners into, you know, the real world situation, I think that we don't do that much back home in my country. Yeah, I think that's what I can share. They're very similar to what Yao has shared. Yeah.
Thank you to both of you. We've run out of time, so I'm gonna take your last words. I'll start with Dr. Ziga, and then to Joel, and then we can bring this webinar to a close. Dr. Yao, do you have any last words before we end?
Yes, thank you. for the opportunity given to me to share my China experience with my students and some of my colleagues who have joined us today. For them, I've been telling them that if you ask me 1,000 times, I would say China is the best. You have to go there and have that experience. Like in every system, we don't have a perfect system. Let me say that they have their own challenges, but I went there to school. So in terms of the educational aspect, I would say that I am happy to have gone there and to be where I am. In terms of their lifestyle, and like as Joel said, yes, it's sometimes a problem. You'll be at a supermarket, they'll bring like a white cloth to rub your skin just to make sure, to be sure whether it's black. So, and sometimes we retaliate by calling them yellow. So, and then we all move on. So these are some of the challenges that we face. But overall, I believe that China has helped some of us in terms of even the hard work. And we don't really give up like that. You go to the laboratory, these guys are there from 8 to 11. They will go and have their lunch and come back around 2. They'll be in the lab from 2 to 5, have their dinner, come back 7 to 11. Virtually, they have no life. And they are really putting in all their best. You ask someone, what do you want to be in future? He will tell you, oh, I want to be famous in this area. So it motivates you when you are there to also know that, no, I need to also put in a little bit of hard work and follow their footsteps. And then let's see where it will land us. So thank you very much.
Before you end, I think one of your students wants to know which other areas they can actually read in the area of geomatic engineering. I just want you to add that to your closing remarks, just to benefit the person.
Okay. So, for example, in the geomatic engineering, geodesy is still underexplored. But besides geodesy, currently within all the universities that are teaching geomatic engineering, we don't even have a hydrographic surveyor or someone who has specialized in hydrographic surveying. Now, if you look at the issues we are even facing at the Keta in terms of the sea level rise, and if you look at the sustainable development goals, the country do not even have more than 2 hydrographic surveyors. There are only 2. One that handles both Takoradi and Temaport. The other one is a private hydrographic surveyor. But in terms of the university, we don't have anybody that has traveled outside to do master's, PhD in hydrographic surveying, coming to lecture within the university. It's still a loophole that they can explore. Aside that, we also have areas specifically in what we call global navigation satellite systems, which we don't have people that have specialized in that area. Yes, we are all teaching it, but you know, if you specialize in an area, it's different from you being the jack of all trades. So this is what I can say to the student that asked the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Before Joe, I think there's also another question, both to Joel and Yao. This person wants to know where to find opportunities to apply for Chinese scholarships, or how to secure a scholarship to study in China, on the continent. Yeah. So if you have any knowledge on that and you want to share.
Okay. I'll share my own experience. Okay. You'll go first. Yeah. All right. So I'll share my own experience. There are like websites that I normally visit, and one of them is opportunitydesk.org. I think that's the one that posted about the school I went to in China. So just kindly check those websites, and you may also just
Go on, Joel. I think his
yeah,
thing
yeah.
got frozen.
Yeah, so I would recommend that, and there's also opportunities for Africans.com. That's also another good one. There is Scholars for Deaf. That's also another good one. There is OYA Oya.com, I guess. Is it .com or .org? I'm not sure, but you have a lot to like see. And when you go to such websites, you can also filter. You can say, I want to go to China, I want to do postgrad, I want to do undergrad, I need a scholarship, I need a fellowship, I need a conference, all of those. So just decide which country you'd like to go to, and then visit those sites. You have a lot of information, and good luck. And you can also go to, the university websites themselves. For Chinese scholarships, you may also want to check the embassy sites. They also post. But for me, I would strongly recommend you to go for those scholarship programs managed by the university. At least based on my experience, it was easier. I'm not saying like the whole process of the other C scholarship is like flawed. Like sometimes they take really, like the deserving people like Yao, but at least based on my experience, try both. For me, I would focus on a more transparent one, and that also needs less work. For the embassy one, there are like lots of, like, you need to do certain things like physically. Whereas for the uni ones, you just do like, Zoom interviews, and it's easier for me. Yeah, so that's what I would say to my good friend over there. And yeah, good luck. And also just feel free to reach out for me. Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'll be more than happy to, yeah, to like give you additional guidance based on my experience.
Thank you, Joe. And we can have your last words as well.
So I would say thank you so much, guys, for hosting me. It's been really a pleasure to speak to an audience, very international audience, but also very curious audience, very interested in, learning about China and Chinese education. And also my friend Yao over there, I think, yeah, after this, we will still have to connect. It was good to know all of you. And I hope what I have shared really made some sense. I would still summarize and say that there's a huge opportunity in China, especially in terms of education. In 2018, in the forum in the FOCAC Forum on China-Africa Relations, cooperation, they announced 50,000 scholarships. So that's part of the Belt and Road Initiative. Most of our countries are benefiting from the Belt and Road Initiative. So there is a huge opportunity. So you need to grab those. All of those information are always available online. China, in terms of education, is one of the best. It has some of the best unis, Peking, Tsinghua, Zhejiang, Shanghai, Jiaotong, Xi'an, Jiaotong, Fudan, so many good units that rank very well also globally. But unfortunately, sometimes you don't see those on the media. So you've got to explore this by yourself. And for us from Africa, like, we can't really say, oh, we have to go to the West. The West has a lot of privileges, and people in the West have got so many privileges. So I would say go to China. And from China, if you want to go to the West, it's entirely up to you, but I'm sure you're going to fall in love with China. In literacy, like, if you look at China, at least nearly 100% literacy rate, by the way. I think the last time I checked was 99.8%. That is the literacy rate in China. In my country, I think it's 75%. So a lot of people are still uneducated. So that is China. And I would also say there is so much to learn from China, like Chinese culture, Chinese foods that you need to explore, some habits in China, respect. I believe in Chinese respect and how to respect parents, how you respect your seniors, some habits of, drinking warm water, that's very healthy. Some work related habits. There's one they call 9-9-6. So it means you start work at 9 and you end at 9 o'clock in the evening and you work 6 days in a week. There's a way they call it in China. So all of those, you learn them when you go to China. But I'm not saying that you're not going to encounter, negative experiences. You'd always encounter negative experiences regardless of where you go, whether it's in the West. So, but China definitely has a huge potential for us as Africans. At least I'll end it there. Thank you, and good luck for those who would like to explore opportunities to study in China.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Yao. Thank you to the audience. I hope that you found this informative. I would like to thank the panelists for their time as well, joining us, to Joe all the way from Australia. I know it's quite late. Thank you for your time. The next session is in August. I hope you can all make time for it. Until then, thank you and bye.
Bye.
Hey, thank you.
Bye.